We have arrived. This is Webb Parton, your host, and we welcome you to the Free Range Dogs podcast. This is a place where we stake out a shady spot and talk about all things dog. Find yourself a soft piece of grass, spin a few circles, plop down, rest your feet, and join us in this joyful conversation. Hello, everybody. This is Webb Parton with Free Range Dogs, and we're going to have a nice conversation today. I'm talking with one of my favorite people, my niece, Sophie Campbell. She lives up in the Northwest, but she has a really interesting story to tell. And with that, let me introduce her. Sophie, say hello to folks, and tell us a little bit about your dog, Abu Doggi.
Oh, yeah. So, thanks for having me, Uncle Webby. This is so fun. So Abu Doggi, she is the light of my life. I found her, I couldn't find her. I got lucky enough to, work with somebody who found her out in, the Kingdom of Bahrain when I was out there with the Navy. So I worked out at NSA Bahrain between 2018 and 2019, and it's basically operational support for the coalition forces out there. They do a lot of safety in ships and aircraft attachments, things like that. Yeah. So it's actually a co-base for the Navy, and it's got parts under the authority and regulations of the Kingdom of Bahrain, which makes things very interesting, especially for things like pet export, which is what I ended up having to do.
Well, and tell me, first off, Abu Doggi, I've seen her in pictures. I might have met her, but she's a little thing. She's a tiny little thing.
Oh, yeah.
And she's a pocket size. She goes with you everywhere. And you had gone away to a foreign country. And you're in probably not a terribly good place. I won't characterize it because I couldn't speak for you, but, I would imagine that, she was a real comfort when you found her. Describe that first time you saw her.
So the first time that I saw her, actually I'd first heard of her, and I fell in love with her when I heard about her. So, the place I was working, you're right, I would, describe the experience out there as probably just uncomfortable, and, it was a little lonely, it was a tough time out there. And so I found Abu Doggi in my first month while I was out there. I was working with another active duty nurse, and he told everyone he found this little puppy, in a trash bag, out on the side of the road. And I had heard about this dog. Her name at the time was Polly or Poppy, something like that. And this dog was just, this dog that I had heard about for a few weeks, was described as aggressive and, bad with children and just a complete wreck. So he spoke about this dog, not in a positive way. And, the deal out there is a bunch of stray animals, and her being found in a trash bag was not very uncommon. Mm-hmm. It was, it's very interesting out there. There's a lot of stray animals, and particularly dogs, and especially interesting breeds. Like, I'm talking, stray Irish setters, stray Labradors, stray Golden Retrievers. I've seen stray Great Danes. She's a Shih Tzu poodle, and that was pretty common to see stray poodles and stray Shih Tzus. Why there were so many bizarre, breeds of dogs that were stray, there were definitely a lot of, street mixed dogs that were just kind of, mixed plate pound puppies, running around. But the deal is, in Bahrain it's connected to Saudi Arabia by a bridge, and this bridge was notorious for bringing over a lot of things into Bahrain, mainly stray animals, because Saudi Arabia likes to keep their streets clean, I guess, and they brought them over to Bahrain and dumped them there. This guy I worked with found her in a trash bag. He said, the bag was tied up. It's, 100 million degrees out there, and unfortunately she was in a bag with other dogs that hadn't made it, other puppies, and he noticed that, she was, I think one of two in the trash bag that actually were alive when he found them. So he took her home. I'm not sure how old she was. He says she was very little, but she wasn't a brand new puppy. So I'm guessing she was probably a few weeks old, or maybe a few months old. So, he found her in this trash bag and took her home. And I don't want to blame him for anything, but when I got her from him, it was pretty clear she had been neglected, and maybe he didn't know what he was doing, or what it was to take on a pet, and just the circumstances out there were very bizarre. The culture out there, especially with military members or visitors, is a lot of them would find dogs, keep them, and when they had to leave in a year or 6 months, they would put them back out on the street, because it was very, very difficult to get these dogs home, to find homes for these dogs. It was just, it's not an animal friendly, environment out there.
And what did you do to, because you weren't living on base, correct?
Yeah, I was not living on base. I was living about 30 minutes outside of base. So that experience in itself was very interesting. I was, I was 24 or 25 at the time, and I had to actually bring my car out there. So I was one of the few people, especially few women out there that drove. I lived far from base, so I was alone. And when I would come into work every day, I would hear him, talking about this dog and how this dog was just a bad dog. And, other people in this clinic had met this dog before, and she would bite people, and she was aggressive and all these terrible things. So anyway, it was his time to go, and he was walking down the hallway one day, and I hear him talking to someone else and say, well, I'm just going to have to, I'm going to put her back in the street. I'm not taking her with me. Like, I'm just going to, put her back where I found her. And I heard this, and I, at this point, had not even seen a photo of her. All I knew was that she was this probably very scared little dog. And it made me so upset. So, I heard him say that he wanted to put her back out on the street, and I was wearing my big navy boots at the time, and I just distinctly remember I kicked open my door, and I was like, nope, I'll take her. Like, I'll pick her up tonight. Mm-hmm. So he was just like, wow, I was like, yep, I'll take her. Everybody who had met this dog, met Abu, they were like, no, like, she's a bad dog. She pees and poops everywhere, and she barks, and she's mean and aggressive. And I was like, I don't care. I want her. So I showed up that day, to his house. Everything was pretty much packed up, and I, got this dog from her. When I showed up at the house, she was living in a closet. There was poop and pee all over the floor. She had extremely long hair. Her nails were long. She needed a lot of love. And he handed me, some, receipts of, he did go and get her vaccinated, which was really great. And had taken her to the vet for a checkup when he first got her. So, he gave me a little bit of her paperwork and in a baggie, and I picked her up and we left, and she never saw him again. So I took her home. The second I saw her, I knew she was the dog for me. She was so, so sweet. She was absolutely the sweetest little thing. And I could not believe that this was the dog that was described to me from all these other people who had met her and the man himself. And
you were living in an apartment?
I was. So that's another part too, is I was living in an apartment, and they had a very, very strict no animal policy. Just like everywhere, there was a very strict no animal policy. So Miss Abu, she became very accustomed to riding in my oversized purse in and out of my building every single day. She, which I will say, now that she's older, she can get in a little bag, no problem, and I can take her into grocery stores. It all worked out for the best. But I was living in fear of being evicted for many months before I finally decided that me and the security guard were going to be friends. Beer out there was hard to come by, so I'd come bring him a pack of beer once a week, some Heineken once a week, and he would look the other way when I walked in and out with him. So, yeah,
I was very good. Yes.
I took her home. It was obvious she needed, potty training. She had never gotten potty training. At this point, I would say she was probably 6 months old. I think he had her for a few months. So she may have been 5 or 6 months at this point. I'm not quite sure. Got her a big haircut, gave her, the special beauty treatments and nail trimming, and, got her some good food. And, gosh, I just absolutely loved her. She was scared of everything. She was scared of walking, on the sidewalks. She was scared of cars. She was very, very scared of men. She was scared of just going outside. She was very, very beautiful dog. And, I would say honestly within a few weeks, she just became, this little Velcro, just this little piece on me that everywhere I went, she went. She got more and more comfortable. I remember just laying on the ground with her all the time and making sure she felt comfortable with me. And I think very quickly she became a very trusting dog. And I just could tell looking at her eyes, she was so happy. I was so happy. And we were perfect together. Not to say that things weren't rough. Being in the military out there, I had really, really long days. I was on duty all the time. I mean, I was gone at least 12 hours every day, doing my job out there, which was a very intense job. It was a lot of work. And, I found myself, worried about her staying at home this long. And I would try to drive home when I could, but it was just, my job was so demanding, and, it was just really hard. So by absolute luck, this, little angel came to my rescue, and, I got a little piece of paper under my door one day, and it was written in the most broken English. Everything was misspelled. It looked like it had been written by a child. And it was this note that said, "Ma'am, your dog is so cute. What a cute puppy. I love her. Let me help you with her. I live nearby, something with a number." So I called this lady, and she was a local Bahraini national, and, she barely spoke English, and I didn't speak what she spoke, and, we ended up building a wonderful relationship together, just basically communicating with our love for Abu. So she came every day and walked Abu while I was at work and checked in on her. And in exchange, I would buy her, clothes and give her things that I owned that I didn't need anymore. And I, gave her, a lot of food. I gave her lots of gifts and, clothing and things like that. And always put as much money as I could, under these items for her that I'd leave at my door. And she would come and walk Abu, and it was just so funny, the relationship that I built out there, with the locals, because of Abu. She was so cute, especially when she got more comfortable being outside. Everywhere I went with her, all the children in the neighborhood, they all knew Abu. Abu, Abu, Abu. Everybody yelling, they all loved Abu. Mm-hmm. So I'd walk down with her, and all these little children would just run up and be like, "Oh, he's so cute. I love him." And I kept saying, why do you think she's a boy? And they say, "Oh, but it's a boy." I said, no, what's the name? I said, Abu. They said, that's a boy. And I was like, no. So I decked her out in all pink and rhinestones. I was like, I'm going to make her the girliest dog out there. I had little bows in her hair. I was like, this is definitely a girl, guys. Like, this is a tiny little girl puppy. And, finally, one day, another local guy in my building, I was actually the only military member out that far in that building by many miles, so I actually didn't see many other, foreigners out where I was living. One of my guys in the apartment building, was talking, to one of my friends who had come over. Everybody knew Abu. Everybody at work knew about Abu. Everybody in my building knew about Abu, except for the building manager, but that was thanks to the security guard. And everybody knew and loved her. But one day, my neighbor was in the elevator with my friend, and he was like, oh, like, you look military, like, are you gonna go visit Abu's mom? And no one knew my name, by the way. I was just Abu's mom, Abu's mommy or Abu's mama. No one knew my name. So they were like, you're gonna go visit Abu's mom. And my friend was like, yeah, I am. And she said he started just cracking up in the elevator, and she was like, what's so funny? And he was like, I really love Abu's mom, and like everyone loves Abu. And he was like, we always crack up when we're talking to her because she has no idea that she named her little girl dog son. And I was like, oh my God. And no one ever told me. And I thought it was so funny and so sweet. And there was just this like funny inside joke. I always remember thinking like, man, why is everybody, they always are laughing when I'm telling them, you know, Abu's name. And I just thought, oh, it must be a funny name. Nope, it means boy. It means son. And, I just thought that was so cute. And, I don't know, it made everybody, especially the children, they laughed so hard. They would like look under her belly and be like, Abu. And I was like, yes. And they would just all look at each other and crack up. I thought it was so funny.
Why did you choose to live so far out? Could you?
I didn't want to, because I was an officer. I basically had to go out in town and find somewhere available that would take me.
Okay.
The rent was really hard. Out there is just a very bizarre, very weird place. It's got its charm, but it's an interesting place, and the general rules that apply here in America don't apply out there, and stuff is just very different. So I basically had to, find a realtor essentially, which she wasn't really that, but, whatever. And her cousin's nephew's friend, owned an apartment that was willing to take a single American female. And so kind of how I got set up with it, everything was basically done through, paper, pencil, and cash. And yeah, it was a funny world out there. Very funny world out there.
Well, and I imagine that, you're kind of thrust in that situation, and you're working as a nurse in a hospital near an active war zone. You've probably, like many people, you've probably seen things you can't unsee. This little dog comes into your life, and what did that mean for you? I mean, was it, did it feel like, home? Did it feel like, a friend that was with you at all times? Because it sounded like Abu bonded pretty quick if she was hiding in that purse going in and out and not giving you away.
Yes. Yeah. It felt like I had somebody who, was just always there for me. And I was dating my boyfriend at the time, husband now. We were dating long distance. This was our 4th year of doing long distance. The time change out there, I believe it's 16 or 18 hours. It was impossible to talk to friends from home. It was really hard. And, the people out there, they're going through the same thing, and the active duty folks, and there's a lot of like coping going on out there. There's a lot of drinking and, not great choices going on. And I just remember feeling like it was really hard to make friends out there. At one point I was the only female, nurse out there, and in my, small clinic, I was only female for a while. And it was just like, gosh, really, really hard to kind of feel, close to anything. Mm-hmm. So she did me feel at home. I grew up with dogs. We had so many dogs growing up. I've always loved dogs, and it just felt like it was meant to be. When I called my husband and told him, I had basically taken this dog, I gave him the quick, the short of it. A dog was found in the trash. She's a total mess. She's going to be a huge nightmare probably for a while, but I love her and I want her. And I'm going to keep her. I'm taking her home with me. And, my first thought was, gosh, he's probably not going to be too happy. We definitely had planned on getting married, moving in together. We had always talked about wanting a really big dog that could go do all these adventures with us, go hiking with us, go backpacking, go snowboarding, go do all the outdoorsy, go sailing, go swimming, go surfing, paddleboarding. We were always talking about this, bigger dog that would go do all these amazing things with us. So I was worried, let him know, like, hey, I found a 12-pound Shih Tzu poodle. And like this is the dog I'm taking home. And and before I could even get it out of my mouth and, send him a photo, he was like, I love it. Like, I'm so happy. Like I think he knew how tough it was. Mm-hmm. And I really needed her. And, and she needed me. And it was just like, it honestly was divine intervention. I don't know how I got so lucky to have her. But, the funny part is, fast forward, 4 or 5 years, and this dog she is everything me and my husband, talked about back, 10 years ago when we were dating, of like what we saw in our future. And, we always talked about, kids is a different discussion, but we did always talk about like having the dog that like could go and do these fun adventures with us. And he can do everything. Just on Sunday, we went on a 8-mile like hike, just straight up to an alpine lake. He goes all the way up in her little boots, swims. Everybody on the trail is like, how in the world is this tiny little Shih Tzu like making it up these giant boulders and doing all these crazy things? And it's incredible. She does everything. She sits and goes on my paddleboard with me. She's an enormous swimmer. We get her near a body of water and she just dives in. It's so funny how the world works and how, my time, I say this, I told myself this often, being in the military, it was hard. It was hard as a nurse. I did a lot of things that civilian nurses don't have to do. And, I definitely saw a lot of things that I'll remember the rest of my life. And, being, looking back at where I am now, I'll say the Navy gave me a boo, and it gave me, a lot of really close friends. Mm-hmm. And, I'm so grateful that I even was out there and was able to find her. Cause gosh, my life would have been so different. It would have been completely different without her. And I know for, Brent, my husband too, he honestly is like, he's tapped into this love he didn't even know he had. He's completely obsessed with her. And we don't have any children right now. She is our child, and she's like the absolute highlight of our life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our decisions are made like what's best for Abu. And like, we want to give her, just the most incredible life. These little guys, they live a long time, but they're not going to be around for, 70, 80, 90, 100 years like me and my husband. So gosh, we just, every moment we can, we try to make sure she knows she's never going back in the trash bag. She is the best thing that ever happened to us.
So you're there, your tour of duty was a year? You were in country a year? How long were you committed to being there?
I was committed to being there, 1 year. And yeah, that went by very slowly. Ooh, boy.
Well, you had a date certain when you were leaving, and you had to think about how were you going to get Abu back home?
Yeah. Yes. So the months were going by, and I did have a date of discharge out of there. And, that date was moving back and forth. We were actually at a rocky time going on with Iran at this year. The Persian Gulf, we're right on it, and I can't remember what the mileage is, but it's something like 30 or 50 miles. We're very close to Iran. Bahrain is the Navy base out there is the only military, medical facility in the Middle East. So it has been a target. It was a target back in the early 2000s. They had to evacuate the base, which actually, they believe is the reason why there are so many unique stray dogs out there, is because a lot of people had to leave their pets behind. You could leave family. So there were very, very expensive dogs that were being behind. So it's kind of interesting, but, we were at a rocky time. Kuwait right there. We're not very few miles from Qatar, and, there was a lot going on in Kuwait at that time, and Iran. So I started thinking early about how I was going to get her home, because the culture out there was you get the dog, you give it the best life you can for the time being, and then you put it back where you found it, and somebody else will pick it up. It was cruel. It was a cruel, and unfortunately, that's just the way it was. So I started thinking early how I was going to do this. Thankfully, because the way the world works, my experience in the beginning of my time there, I, had a car, I had to get a license, I had to do all this other stuff, I had to go live out in town. Because I was not afforded the luxury of living on base and, being able to walk to work, and I had to depend on all these other things, I actually was able to build a lot of relationships with the locals. Oh. So, one of the local guys who, actually worked on base, because again, the base was a weird mix where we were actually under the, authority of Kingdom of Bahrain. It's a very unique situation out there. I was able to build a relationship with this guy. His name was Saddam, and Saddam had helped me earlier, get a license plate for my car by calling up about 3 folks, speeding into a large sandy dirt pit, another car driving up and opening their trunk, taking out a random license plate and drilling it onto my car. And I was like, okay, like that's what we're working with out here.
Right. Whatever works. Yeah,
whatever works. All of the paperwork was written in Arabic. I don't know how, well, not obviously, a lot of folks actually do know how to do Arabic, but, I don't. So I had to get a translator, and he was an awesome translator. It probably took me 2 months of work to set her up. And the, most difficult part about it actually is we needed a veterinarian to sign off on her health. It had to be within 24 hours of the flight. Ooh. And this was a flight that was delayed multiple days. Mm-hmm. And ended up shooting out on a Sunday, and the weekends out there are Friday and Saturday, and there is no veterinary open on the weekend at all. No, there is no such thing as emergency animal medicine out there at all. Mm-hmm. So, I basically had to get a friend of a friend to, help me, and Saddam helped me, and we vet this one for her. But they were checking me down to the minute, and we actually got within about an hour and a half of when her health thing was going to expire to get us on the plane. So it was so stressful. Oh my gosh. But like, I got her, and the relief I felt when I finally boarded the plane, and I had Abu Doggi. She was in her little carry harness, and I just remember thinking like, I did it. Like, I actually did it. I cannot believe I was able to do it, but I did it. I was so proud.
What do you think Abu Doggi thought about that whole process?
Oh, well, she slept her way through most of it,
okay.
Lay on her back and snored. Mm-hmm. She did not give a single flying anything. She was just, she knew something was going on. She knew big things were happening. It was just so funny because every turn I took, her with me made life harder, but I still would have done it that way. Like, I mean, down to us having to, lay over in these weird countries where like we can exit the plane, but we can't exit the tarmac. There were so many complications that happened because I was with her, and a lot of these countries in the Middle East, they are not dog friendly. That is not a thing. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to get food for almost 24 hours because I couldn't leave her anywhere. You were always scared of, everything, shooting dogs in the street was pretty common. So I was so petrified or paranoid that something was going to happen to her. So yeah, it made things really hard when we got stuck on the day and a half layover. I couldn't get into anywhere. I couldn't enter any buildings. I couldn't get into anywhere because I had her. And actually one of my good friends, in the Navy was stationed out in Spain at the time, and she came to me and Abu's rescue, and she was actually, I call her Abu's first auntie. She was Abu's first auntie out there, and she just obviously fell in love with Abu. But there's so many tiny little small stories that I had from, the day I got her to So we got her back to the U.S. and it was every single turn. It just got more complicated because of her. But it was fine. You know, by the time I got, finally back to America, we flew into, DC.
And how long was, Abu Doggi, short stop in Spain for a time with her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were in Spain for about a day and a half with her. She is the most well-traveled dog on earth. I think, I'm trying to think here. So she's been to Bahrain. We did a Dubai stop, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and then flew over to Spain, was stuck in Spain for a day and a half, flew back to Washington, D.C., then had to take a train down to Virginia, and then we were in Virginia for a month. And then that started phase 18 of my travel back to the Pacific Northwest. So then I had to go from Virginia. We went to Texas, had a layover, got stuck in Texas for a day and a half again, and then finally up to Seattle, Washington. This little dog has been all over the world. She was sleeping on my lap almost the entire time, unless I got a flight with just one flight attendant that didn't like that. Mm-hmm. But other than that, she slept like a baby on my lap.
And so you entered the U.S. with her when you landed in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that feel?
Oh, I felt like the most patriotic. I wanted to go and put a American flag around her back like a cape. I was like, this is America's dog, man. I was like, she is the dog America needed. I literally was like, I was just so excited. I kept telling everybody, who's an American citizen now? Like, it was such a relief. And, you know, the whole process for me too, like this was the end of my Navy career. You know, I was able to, I owed my time. I was all done. I ended up doing, you know, about almost, 6 months, you know, past what had owed. Mm-hmm. And so I was so ready, to start the next phase of my life, with Abu. And finally, you know, I get to move to Seattle and be with my husband who I hadn't been able to live with for 4 years. And, you know, my, family that I spoke to once a month because it was so difficult to FaceTime, you know, 18 hours apart. And it was just like, I was so relieved. And, when we showed up at the airport and, it was what I had imagined. Every step I took that it got more complicated with Abu, I just kept imagining like, okay, one day I'm going to make it back to Seattle. We're going to arrive. I'm going to see my husband and he's going to see Abu and he's going to see me and it's going to be perfect. And it was, you know, we showed up. It was a pretty late night flight when we finally got in. And I had Abu, and my husband was standing there, and he gives me a big hug and big kiss, picks up Abu, gives her a big hug and big kiss, and the rest is history. I mean, they just are inseparable.
And so Abu accepted him right away.
Right away. Huh. Right away. No other person was she friendly like that with. He picked her up. Flipped her on her back. She loves to lay like a little baby with her belly up and she falls asleep like that all the time in his arms. And I just remember her looking so happy and so relaxed. And it was such a relief. We finally did it. We made it. You know, that was what I had waited for almost 9 years. You know, the minute I, signed, you know, at 17 saying, okay, Navy's going to pay for college. Like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be hard. It's going to be 4 years of, you know, Navy training. And then I'm going to be active duty for 4, maybe 5 years. And, you know, I just remember thinking like it wasn't for nothing. You know, it worked. Like I did what I meant to do. I found who I was meant to find. I would do it all again if it meant finding her. Mm-hmm. It was just awesome.
And so how old is Abu now?
She's gotta be about 5.
Okay. So she's a relative youngster then.
she's a young girl. Me and my husband, we told her she was turning 3 for many years. And then we decided, okay, maybe she's not 3, she's 5, but her birthday is now the 4th of July because she's an all-American girl now.
Okay. Well, it worked out so well because there, at any point it may not have, I mean, that's a hard thing about those sorts of, adventures is that many times they don't work out. But I know your aunt and I, when we heard that you had made it home with her, we were just so relieved for the both of you.
It was like, oh my gosh, I was so happy. It's just, it's funny. You think about all those little moments, that things, you make a 1 degree change right now, and in 5 years, it launches you in a totally different course. Like, it was just so interesting seeing how everything had played out in my life so far, and how, like, I don't know, it's just really interesting to think about, because you're right, there were a lot of moments where, like, it should not have worked, but it did. There was a moment where I was really, really scared. I had a boo, and we were packing up to leave, and this was just a week probably before our flight. And I came home, and I found that she had gotten into my suitcase and everything had been pulled out, and she had actually gotten into a bag of vitamins, and they were these chewable vitamins, and it was like, and I was like, oh no, and I couldn't find her, and I found her outside my apartment. She had gotten out, she had like jumped over the balcony, and she was just standing there shaking and drooling, and I was like, she's gonna die. Like, she's, I'm looking up all the different, my vitamin, they were in Ziploc baggies, and somehow she got into it. I have no idea how, oh my gosh, but she had eaten a bunch of these chewable, I think it was vitamin B or D, and those are toxic for dogs. And I believe, or I think at the time I remember like panic Googling, what could she have eaten? And, she definitely was, I thought she was going to die, and, she was so sick, just drool pouring out of her mouth. Her heart rate was racing. Her pupils were, in point. She wasn't moving. I was like, oh my God. I left my home. I left my keys. I left my phone. I was driving around like a mad woman trying to find, an emergency vet. There's no emergency vets. There's no one that can help. The one veterinarian I knew was deployed. Oh my gosh. I remember running into a pharmacy. Dogs weren't allowed anywhere. And I ran into a pharmacy. I had no shoes. I had no bra. I had this dog that saliva was pouring out of her mouth.
Oh boy.
It was violently, it looked like she was seizing, running into pharmacies and just like crying and like just begging the pharmacist to help me, and no one spoke English. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And, that I ran out of gas. It was, oh my God, it was just, everything that could go wrong went wrong. I was out. I had no phone. I had my car had I didn't have my apartment key. My car had ran out of gas. I had no shoes. The dog was dying. And I remember just sitting on the sidewalk with her and crying and being like, she's going to die. Like all this, we had done all of this work. I just wanted to take her. I called my sister, and, I think I was just in shock, and there was nothing I could do for her. I was trying to think of, I'm a nurse, so I was like going through every possible thing I could do to save her life. And, I don't know how she lived, but I fell asleep on the sidewalk outside my house with her, and I woke up and she had lived. And I was like, it's a miracle. I couldn't believe she survived. But that was like a week before our flight. And I think there's little angels watching out for her and for me. So she was a good girl, but oh my gosh, I thought I was going to lose her. But that's just an example of how like every turn something, like.
And so she just came out with time. She just came out of it then.
It
worked itself through.
Yep. she somehow lived. You know, she had lost control of her bowels. She lost control. It was the dying process. I thought she was dead. I completely expected. I just, you know, we were outside, wherever my car had ran out of gas, and we were playing. Oh, yeah. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was like, this is the summation of like my time in Bahrain, you know. I was like, this, you're
one week from getting out of there, and then the full tsunami hits.
Oh, I was like, this is the end. This is the end of it. Like, this is how the story ends. I was so mad, and I think I was just in shock that she lived. I could not believe it. Mm-hmm. She lived, and she woke me up in the morning. And at that point, you know, I'd been driving around really only a few more hours until the security guard showed up and let me in. But I was like, you know, we had walked home. I was like, what a freaking mess. Oh my God.
well, it wasn't the end. You made it home with her. And,
made it home. Yeah.
Yeah.
We weren't too far from home, which was the good news. We're just around the corner, like half a mile from my house. But I was, you know what happens. And, you know, the whole time too, which is so insane, is, you know, my background is trauma. Like, I'm an emergency room nurse, you know, by trade. And I was like, I am 1,000 times more calm when it's life on the line, but all of a sudden it was my own dog. And I was like, everything I'd been taught just thrown out the window. I full panic, and I'm sure I was a sight. I was banging on the walls of pharmacies, crying. The pharmacy would let me in. I'd just be, would you have anything to make kids throw up? Like, do you have anything else? I need to entice vomiting. And, you know, no one spoke English. I'm like pointing at things, and they're like, get out. Like, you can't have a dog in here. And I was like, she's dying. Oh, it was so dramatic.
Well, what do you look forward to now with Abu Doggi? Now that she's middle-aged.
I know, my little middle-aged girl. Well, I'm looking forward to the day she gets a little bit older and maybe isn't such a psychopath about jumping in the water all the time. She just throws herself off of sailboats, off of power boats. She just wants to swim so bad. So maybe one day will come where she's content and happy just sitting near the water instead of launching herself into it.
And you know, that's unusual. Often those little guys aren't real swimmers, you know.
No, that's what they say. And she has always been a swimmer. We used to go to the beach together when we were out in Bahrain, and she absolutely loves swimming.
Did you you introduce her to water, you think? Because if she was a little street dog, she, you know, particularly as young as she was when you first got her, or when she was first, she wouldn't have been exposed to water. So probably her first contacts were with you when you took her to the beach.
I think so. I think you're right. I didn't really even think about that before. She was not a good swimmer, and it was so hot out. I was like, there's no choice. Like, we're gonna die. We gotta go in the water and cool off. And you know, we'd go swim in the water. At least in the winter. The summer came along, the water was 106 degrees, so that didn't work anymore. But
wow.
It was, and I only know that because I got my scuba license while I was out there, and they had to pull us out on my last day of certification because the water was 102, and it is illegal to scuba at 102.
Wow.
Yeah, so hot out there.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly an encouraging story to hear, and I'm so glad that it all worked out, and that she was so welcome. You know, a lot of times you bring a new dog in, you know, it's just been you and her, right? And then you come home and who is this person? You know, this new husband you're bringing in the picture. I'm not, you know, this dog's saying, I'm not sure about that. I want to share, you know.
I know. And, unfortunately for me, I'm always trying to remind Boo that mommy is the one who saved her life, not daddy, because all she does is cuddle with Brent. And I am like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like she would pick him over me now. And I'm just like, what in the world? Like,
she's a daddy's girl.
She is. I'm like, what? Always trying to remind her to save her life, but it doesn't work. She's obsessed with him, and he's upset. Everyone's got their spouse as their background on their phone, except for my husband. It's Abu. So.
Oh, that's dear. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and making the time for the conversation. I've so enjoyed talking with you, and I'm sure that folks will love to hear the story and hear how it turned out. Thank you, Sophie.
Thanks, Uncle Webby.
Okay. And then for our folks out there, we're out of time. I want to thank you all for staying with us and listening. If you enjoyed this, please do hit the subscribe button. We could use the support. And we do have a website up, and there's a lot of back issues, a lot of interesting blogs and such. So please do go to freerangedogs.com and check that out. With that, I want to wish you a very good day. This is Webb Parton with Free Range Dogs, wishing you and your furry friends the absolute best. Take care. If you like this episode, I invite you to visit our website, freerangedogs.com. It's where you can find the stuff you need to live the free-range dog lifestyle. I want to help you with that. Book a consultation call or an in-person training, attend one of our ongoing events, or join our online membership program. We got it all on freerangedogs.com. All right, it's time to head back to the truck and the water bucket for the thirsty dogs. This is Webb Parton signing off, wishing you the boundless joy that comes when you share the outdoors with your best friend.